This is a walkthrough of Underlayered Suspicion, a review of CRA audits of Muslim-led charities. This part of the walkthrough will take you through an analysis of how we get to some of the conclusions that we do. But one of the first things to understand about the report is that it centers on Canada's whole of government approach, specifically to anti-terrorism financing and anti-radicalization. This walkthrough will introduce you to the anti-terrorism policy that the Government of Canada currently uses to analyze not-for-profit organizations. What's important to understand is that Canada doesn't act alone in these matters. Anti-terrorism financing is a global enterprise and centers around a particular organization, a multilateral organization called the FATF, or what's called the Financial Action Task Force. The Financial Action Task Force, as we write, was born in 1989 to combat the rise of money laundering from the drug trade. After 9/11, countries around the world thought that Osama bin Laden's abilities as an international financier are what enabled his terrorist activities. And so the Financial Action Task Force was asked to take on the role of now addressing anti-terrorism financing. Now, there are some methodological problems of linking money laundering from the drug trade to terrorist financing. What is interesting is how these two wars on drugs and wars on terror seem to be two sides of the same coin. Nonetheless, the Financial Action Task Force creates a series of regulations for governments to observe. Those those various regulations include what at the time in 2001 was called Special Recommendation Number 8. Special Recommendation Number 8 was focused on the not-for-profit sector. And as they write, the not-for-profit organizations may be vulnerable to terrorist financing abuse by terrorists for a variety of reasons. NPOs enjoy the public trust, have access to considerable sources of funds, and are often cash intensive. Furthermore, some NPOs have a global presence that provides a framework for national and international operations and financial transactions, often within or near those areas that are most exposed to terrorist activity. In some cases, terrorist organizations have taken advantage of these and other characteristics to infiltrate some NPOs and misuse funds and operations to cover for or support terrorist activity. Now, the key thing that the FATF does is it requires all of its member states to identify how they are going to go about combating terrorist financing. And the how is wrapped up into what FATF calls its risk-based approach, or RBA. Now, a risk-based approach makes a lot of sense. Imagine any government is going to have scarce resources to do anything. And so if you want a government to assess and go after terrorist financing, you need to find a way for the government to allocate scarce resources. So identifying where the greatest risks are is one way of doing so. The problem, though, with the Government of Canada that we found is that the Government of Canada's approach um, enables systemic racism in the guise of anti-terrorism policies. So what Canada does is it then has to decide on its own RBA, or risk-based analysis model, to be compliant with the Financial Action Task Force. In 2015, Finance Canada, which manages Canada's anti-terrorism policies and reports to FATF, in 2015, Finance Canada did a self-assessment because in 2016, the FATF did what's called a mutual evaluation. This is where FATF makes sure all countries are compliant with its regulations, and it uses a peer review model to assess a country's approach. So in the 2015 self-assessment that Finance Canada did, it wrote that based on open source and other available reporting on the potential for Canadians to send money or goods abroad to fund terrorism, the following countries were assessed to be the most likely locations where such funds or goods would be received: Afghanistan, Egypt, India, Lebanon, Pakistan, Palestinian territories, Somalia, Sri Lanka, Syria, Turkey, United Arab Emirates, and Yemen. So a list of well-known countries, but this is where things get a little bit tricky for us. Relying on both publicly available and classified information on terrorist groups with a Canadian nexus, Canada identifies as terrorist financing threat in connection to 10 groups and foreign fighters. Now, here are those 10 groups right here. And if you look at all 10 of them, they are clearly all identified with Muslims or some form of racial minorities. So you have, for instance, the Khalistan extremist group, which maps onto Canada's Sikh community. You have the remnants of the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Elam, which maps onto Canada's Tamil community. But then look at the other 8, Al-Shabaab, Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, Al-Qaeda Core, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, Jabhat al-Nusra, Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, Hezbollah, Hamas. Of the 10 organizations that the government of Canada identifies as core and central to its RBA, all 10 of them map directly onto racial and religious minorities in Canada. 8 of them map directly onto Canada's Muslim communities. Now, if the RBA is to work as it's supposed to, in order to identify how the government across all of its various ministries, Finance Canada, National Revenue, the CRA, the Charities Directorate, if this RBA is designed to guide how it's going to apply its anti-terrorism policies, who it's going to suspect of terrorist financing, and the kinds of questions it's going to ask and the kinds of information it's going to want, it strikes us that this RBA institutionalizes a racially and religiously systemically biased model that passes as policy here in the government of Canada. It's difficult to discount the claim we write that this policy can have a disproportionate effect on Muslims in Canada. Moreover, the policy reflects a particular view of terrorist financing that associates it with a foreign specter. Now, that's a problem for us now, as we've seen in the last few years with the rise of domestic terrorism and particularly white extremism. This policy raises serious questions as to whether it even reflects our current state of insecurity subject to terrorist financing from a variety of sectors that we've normally associated with the global south, but increasingly taking shape through funding sources in Europe, the United States, and domestically. So this is one key problem that we identify and that we associate with Canada's whole of government approach to anti-terrorism financing. Thank you.